Okay, it's the end of the session. I'm here with my buddy Caspian, and we have Sully, the other dog, and Sully is kind of over there. He might come in the shot. Yes, here's Sully. Sully's a three-legger dog, so let's get that for Caspian. And Sully, here you go, buddy. Yes. Now, there was a little bit of a fight between the two of them over food, and so the guardians now are feeding them separately, which is not unusual. A lot of dogs have issues with food and can guard it. So if that's the case, that's a good maintenance thing, is just feed them separately. Now, I did recommend that they get a snuffle mat. The one that I like is from Runda, R-U-N-D-A. It's gray. It has the tassels that go straight, yes. And then it's got a band around it. And so what I do is I flip it over so all the tassels are going down with gravity, flip it back up, and then I kind of waterfall the kibble in so it goes in the crevices. It'll get funky, so after a month or so, you might have to wash it. Although the one I have, I think I wash it about every 3 months or so. Just kind of how dirty it gets. Okay, so we started off the session by going over a lot of fundamentals. We went over marker words. We did a loading exercise. By the time you guys watch this, really, by the time you watch this, you should be done. So I'm talking to the guardians who are here. So make sure you do that. They're going to be tired after this. Give them about an hour, then grab a handful of treats. Yes, treat. Next room, yes, treat. And you can do it with both dogs together. Just give them each treat out of separate hands to make sure there isn't any frustration. You want to do that about 6 or 7 times and to the point where you say yes, the dog looks at you. Now, I'd also like you to do that with the positive interrupter. That was the sound that I was making to get him to look like, which he responds to really well. So you just make that sound and give him a treat. Then walk in the next room, treat. And I do it for both dogs. So the reason I like using the positive interrupter, we were using it on walks. I do this a lot for leash training. So as soon as the dog gets to the end of the leash, the instant they get to the end of the leash, I make the kissing sound. The dog looks at me. I lower my hand with a treat in it. This causes the dog to come back to me. I say yes when the dog arrives, and I give them that treat. After a while, the dog starts like walking and checking and looking at you. When they do, then say yes and hold out that treat. They come back to you. Are you giving your dog a lot of treats on walks? Absolutely. But the foundation of loose leash walking is getting your dog to pay attention to you. And if you're rewarding your dog, they're going to be more likely to do that. Now, I also like to use the positive interrupter instead of saying no. All attention is rewarding and validating. And that's a fancy way of saying that anything your dog was doing before you give it attention is what you're rewarding it for. This is how it backfires for most people. The dog jumps up on the guest and say, knock that off. That's rewarding. It's not to us. We think about it differently, but for dogs, that is rewarding. If I jump up on a human, I get my guardian's attention. So I'm going to jump up on humans because it works consistently. And so when your dog is doing an unwanted behavior, I don't like to say good or bad because that implies morality, but if they're doing an unwanted behavior, what I'd like to do, let's say the dog is about to jump up on my guest, I go, the dog looks at me and I go touch, and punch is the word, yes. And look what happened. I made that sound, said the word, and he ran from the other room and came over. So the dog's about to jump up on somebody and make the sound that causes them to look at me. So I'm not giving them attention. I'm just making an interesting sound. They're choosing to look at me. When they do, I'm giving the hand targeting cue, and the dog comes over because we practiced that separately. The dog gets a treat for that. Now I've redirected the dog away from whatever it is I don't want. Now, if that's the case, I need to give my dog, maybe ask my dog to sit and give it a treat and touch its hand and give it another treat. And do a couple things to outride the excitement that's happening from the dog's, or somebody being at the door. But if you don't give your dog the replacement behavior, your dog is probably going to go back to doing whatever it was doing before. And so that's my way of saying no, essentially, is positively interrupting. But you should also do that loading exercise. So kiss, give both dogs a treat, walk in the next room, kiss. And you want to get to the point where you make that kissing sound, they look at you right away. You guys can both make that sound, right? Okay, so if you can't, then there's a couple other human versions of it, but that's the one I like to use. It works the best. Okay, we also went over hand targeting. I have a video on that. If you forget how to do that, let me know, but you want to practice that gradually further and further away. Eventually, like your dog to be able to come from about 15 feet away to touch its nose to your hand when you say punch, which is the cue the guardians come up with. Now, how we teach dogs. There's 4 components to teaching a dog. There's the cue, which we used to refer to as the command word, sit, lay down, come, drop, and so on. Then there's the action, actually sitting. Then there is the marker word, in his case, yes, to let the dog know that they did what you want. That would be a good celebrate opportunity. And then it is followed by the payment, which we call a reinforcer, but that's a treat or affection. So those are the 4 components: the cue, the action, the marker word, and then the reward. But when we teach dogs, we actually teach without the first one. We lure the dog into a sit. You shouldn't say the cue unless you're 90% certain when you say the cue that one time the dog does the action. But if I say sit the first time I'm teaching a dog, it doesn't know what sit means. There's probably not 90% certainty it's going to do it. So what I do is I touch the dog's nose with a treat and I lure up, and as soon as its butt hits the ground, I say yes and I release the treat. And I take a step away and I repeat that till that becomes easy to lure. Once the dog's easy to lure, and when the butt hits the ground, I'm saying yes, and then I'm putting the treat in their mouth. When that becomes easy to lure them into a sit, then I would do maybe one, it's easy, yes, treat, and then I would say sit, lure, dog sit, butt hits the ground, I say yes and give them the treat. So I only introduce the cue, the first step of that 4 steps, after it's easy for the dog to do it, because when we say our marker word, we should be 100% accurate. Now the marker word is the indicator that we use to let the dog know that it did something that we want. It occurs the instant the dog does the action, unless the action has duration, like potty or stay. In those situations, we would say the marker word at the conclusion of the activity. Now the marker word the guardians here are using is yes, and it's important to say yes and not yes. And he looked, or yes. Hissing sound is akin to a warning that a lot of animals make, and the marker word is a word that's supposed to be positive. Okay, so after we went over hand targeting and used that as a vehicle for them to practice using the marker words, then we talked about celebrating and manners. Celebrating is rewarding the dog when it offers you a desired behavior without you asking for it. The dog comes to you, you say yes and give a treat. They look at you, yes, give a treat. They lay down, yes, give a treat. They poop outside, yes, and for him, he gets 5 treats. Go to the dog bed, drink water. Anything that your dog does that you want to train them, that you want them to do more often, say your marker word and pet them or give them a treat after they do that. And after a while, when you recognize they're about to drink the water, you could say cocktails. And then the dog drinks the water, you get done drinking, you say yes and give them a treat or a pet. After a while, you say cocktails, the dog goes and drinks that water. So celebrating is the easiest way to train a dog, but it only works if you get in the habit of doing it. So I recommend the guardians both say celebrate to each other if they see their partner not rewarding the dog for an action. And that says, partner, I think you're amazing and beautiful and handsome and talented, and I think you missed out on whatever that thing was. So you should just say yes and pet your puppy under its chin. Now we also went over dog manners, which is when the dog is pushing, punching you, jumping up, barking, demanding attention. Just like little children who ask for things inappropriately, parents give them a do-over. I want chicken nuggets. Would you like to ask for them again? Can I please have chicken nuggets? Yes, we make them chicken nuggets. So a dog nudges you, it's saying, give me some of your attention. So you might want to say, hey, would you like to sit down to earn that attention? I say that one time. And if the dog sits within 2 seconds, I say yes, and I pet under the chin or on the chest. If it doesn't, I just lean back in my chair. I go back to watching TV, making some art, sending an email, whatever it is. I'm not punishing the dog. I'm not mad at the dog, but the dog is not being rewarded or reinforced. So the next time you tell the dog to sit, it's probably more likely to sit, and eventually they'll come down and sit in front of you to prepay for some pets and attention. When they do, make sure you do reward them for that. So those are 2 sides of the same coin. I usually say celebrate when somebody's missing an opportunity to reward the dog when it did something we want, and manners to remind somebody that you might be accidentally rewarding the dog for something we don't want. So get in the habit of doing both those. It'll take you about 2 or 3 months to get in the habit of doing it, but once you do, every time you pet your dog, it becomes a gift. So it's a very small item that becomes very powerful if you get in the habit of doing it. We also went over, some creative exercise tips like playing tug of war, playing fetch. If you want to learn how to teach your dog to fetch, it's going to be about 4 or 5 lessons underneath your lesson on my website. There will be a dog named Boone, a pointer with a black head, and I go through a video on teaching dogs how to fetch. You might want to watch that one. There's one underneath this one, above Boone, that's going to be on teaching dogs how to not jump up on people at the door. You might want to check out that video. If everybody is watching this, if you go to doggonproblems.com and click on dog training videos, I got about 14,000 of them there for you. So we also talked about using a snuffle mat. A snuffle mat is a great way to help dogs drain energy because they're sniffing using their nose and they're working to find that food. So especially for Caspian here, he lives with a senior dog that's a 3-legger. So if he gets fed twice a day out of a snuffle mat, that's like 2 short walks that we get him that kind of help his guardians and help him be more relaxed. Now, remember, you can also use exercise before a walk. So one of the guardians here was a little bit nervous about walking him because of his reactivity. Well, if you exercise him, take him for fetch or do some scent games or something in the house, give him 10 minutes of rest, then take him out for a walk, you're probably going to find it's a little bit easier to control him. It's not going to fix your problems, but it sets him up for success. Same thing if you're having guests come over or whatever the case is, exercising him, or if he's pestering Sully, he wants to play with Sully, and Sully's like, man, I don't have the energy for you. We take him out and fetch, and then Sully doesn't have to do that for us. Now, there's also mental stimulation. I went over feeding out of a snuffle mat. There's treat dispensing toys. One of my favorite ones is an Omega Paw Tricky Treat Ball. It's an orange one, get the large one. And you put treats in there or kibble, and then the dog's going to nudge it. The first couple times you'll have to roll it. Every time they lick the treats up, say your marker word. After a while, the dogs will nudge it around the room. Now, because there's food in it, be careful of having the dogs do this together, but that might be something that Caspian could do in the room when Sully's in another room chewing a collagen stick from Best Bully or something like that. We also went over cookie in the corner. I have a video on how to do that. That's the one where we're throwing the treats on the floor, and then we're saying, come here, to have the dog come back to us. And then we throw 2 treats the next time, 3 treats, and you're saying yes, yes, yes for each treat. When they get done chewing the treats, you say, come here. When they come back, you say yes and give them another treat. Then you throw more. Eventually, you can leave treats on the floor in that area and then just motion in that direction, say, find it, and the dog goes and looks for them. Speaking of find it, I'd like you guys to practice the find it away on your walk. So once a block, you're going to find it away. So again, if the dog there's a dog coming from here, a find it away would be I touch Caspian's nose and I drop a treat on this shoulder, the shoulder away from the other dog. Just on the floor. Don't throw it too far away. We want it very easy for him to get. He gets it. He remembers I like treats. Then we throw one 1 foot away. Now I've turned and taken a step away from the other dog. Get that treat. You say yes. Then throw another one 2 or 3 feet away. He goes to get that one. And when he gets that one, throw another one about 4 feet away. You just moved him away from the other dog or around the car or whatever it is. Now make sure you practice this on once a block on every block. So that way, when you do it later on, it's a normal thing. He doesn't think, I'm going to eat this real quick and turn around because I want to bark at the other dog. And that's your management technique. Now, again, whenever possible, I'd like you guys to use the technique that we went above in the video above to go to a park or a public place where you can practice that. Again, you want to find a place where there's a path and you're on the other side of it. There's a couple trees or shrubs or benches or something. So it's creating a small window like right here where the dog can see between my hands. And that way it's a short, if he's looking at the other dog, you say yes, he looks away. Yes, you only have to do it maybe 2 or 3 times and now I can't see the other dog. And after a while, like I said, he'll start doing the disengage part. He'll look at the dog, turn around and look at you. You can say yes. And then at that point, you might take a little about 1 or 2 seconds to deliver that treat. So by the time he turns and looks back, that dog is gone. But this is what we call stage setup. So instead of just doing it on a walk, when we were on the walk after the video we did above, we ran into a dog that came around a corner and we just weren't ready for it. Now it was a good practice opportunity, but that's going to happen a lot. So whenever possible, try not to practice. He's practicing reactivity in the neighborhood. So whenever possible, try to set yourself a goal. You know what? Twice a week, we're going to go to this park and we're going to practice this and find a couple areas. You don't want to practice just in one area. And practice that engage, disengage, click for looks, whatever you want to call it, and gradually get closer and closer. But that way you're working towards your goal of helping him. Eventually we see another dog, I look away from the dog and I get a treat, and I'm out of practice at barking at them. It takes at least 3 months, if not longer, for them to develop that behavior pattern. But every time he sees the dogs and barks at them, you're undoing a little bit of your work, which is why I'd recommend trying to limit when you walk them in your neighborhood. And if you do, try to pick a time of the day when you're not going to run on a lot of people. And if there are 2 of you, have one of you, whoever's handling Sully, walks to the corner first and looks and sees that there's another dog. If there is another dog, then the person with the other dog, with Caspian, walks up 8, 10 paces, however many paces you need for that distance. And when that dog comes around, boom, you're able to practice a couple times. So that way, if you are walking the neighborhood, you have a spotter who can let you know, and that way we're limiting as much as possible being surprised and having a dog come out and Caspian barking and at them. But remember, when you're doing that, 10 or 15 minutes max, if you're going to a park or something like that. So I know it's a pain to drive to the park and all that, but you're going to make much better progress. And if you could try to do that 2 or 3 times a week. See, I'm already pushing. I was asking once or twice. Now I'm at 2 or 3 times. But it's a numbers game. So the more often you practice this with success, the better your dog's going to get. We want to get to the point where hopefully you can walk past Sully. And we have done this with dogs, that they will bark and try to kill the other dog. And after a couple months of practice are walking right past another dog without barking and reacting. I'm not saying that's going to be the case here. It's going to depend on the quality of the practice the guardians put in and the frequency, and not letting him practice the unwanted behavior. But we've seen it happen quite a bit. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we want to go over. Anything else you want me to touch on? Now, you're probably going to have questions on the stuff that's in this video, or maybe some other stuff that we talked about off camera that I didn't talk about in this video. Please text me. If I don't hear from you, it means that usually things are going well. So I love it when my guardians call me back, even with the success stories. I usually get more like, now my dog did X, Y, or Z. How do I fix it? probably share videos from another session. If we need to set up another session, we can certainly do that, but I'm hoping we don't need to. I think you guys have the tools that you need, and it's just you guys need a little bit of guidance. But if you have a little question about this, that, and another thing, I don't charge for phone calls or text, so please make sure you do call me. I won't complain if you give me a Google review. I think that's pretty much it. Hey, Caspian, come here, buddy. Let's sign off. Well, go over there and get that one. Come here, Sully. I'll let you get that one, Sully. All right, Caspian, you got to go over there. Go get that one. Sully. Well, this is my buddy Caspian over here. This is Cass. And this is my buddy Sully. And this is their roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.